Family Guy is not the show to watch if you're looking for parental advice, as there are plenty of bad dads in the show beyond just Peter. So today, we're going to be looking at the worst fatherly moments from the dads in the show to see who's the absolute worst. Let's start with Brian, who is actually the topic of the request that inspired this video. Brian's history as a father is relatively brief, but there are plenty of missteps and failures to cover, starting with when Brian learned that he had an estranged son in the former life of Brian.
Brian, this is Dylan. He's your son.
So if you completely ignore the laws of space, time, and physics, yes, this 7-year-old dog has a 13-year-old son. Look, you've already accepted that this dog is having relations with human women. You can't act surprised by any of the other nonsense the show throws at you. And judging by his attitude, it sounds like Dylan is getting along just fine.
Shouldn't you be in school?
I don't know.
It's Wednesday.
Up yours!
Well, that's enough father-son bonding for one lifetime. So instead of stepping up and actively playing a role in Dylan's life after all these years, Brian opts to just skedaddle out of there and forget Dylan ever existed.
Oh, it was awful. That kid was a complete thug. I'm telling you, I couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Spoken just like a guy who wants to make up for all those years he missed out on. Oh well, Dylan probably doesn't need him. He's already smoking cigarettes at 13. He's practically ready for the outside world. But Brian can't get out of being a dad that easily, as Dylan ends up getting dumped on his lap.
To Brian from Tracy. He's your problem now.
These parents are really doing wonders for the kid's self-esteem, just passing him along like he's the common cold rather than a human. And it quickly becomes clear that Brian is not prepared for parenting someone of Dylan's upbringing.
I hate you all! I didn't ask to be born! If I had a gun, I would kill you all!
Teenagers, am I right? So dramatic. Brian just cannot connect with this kid on any level, but maybe there's something out there that can help grease the wheels.
My pot! Your pot?
Now look, I'm not saying this is in any way an effective or reasonable way to help parent your kid, but I'm just gonna let the results speak for themselves. In the cloud haze of the devil's lettuce, Brian and Dylan eventually find common ground, and Brian vows that things are gonna change.
It's gonna be different from now on, and I'm gonna make you into a better person starting first thing tomorrow.
And believe it or not, Brian does exactly that, turning Dylan into an upstanding citizen almost overnight. This is actually kind of an example of him being a good dad, but you know what cancels out all of that? Being an annoying dad.
Lois, I will decide what is best for my child, all right?
Suddenly, the guy who doesn't pay for the groceries has a lot of strong opinions on what kind of groceries Dylan eats. So while Brian did turn Dylan's life around with questionable methods, his performative sense of superiority that spawned from it almost kind of negates any good he did. Dylan ends up leaving to go live with his mom again by the end of the episode, and in hindsight, that's probably for the best. Trust us, kid, Brian's characterization only gets worse from here on out.
I'm gonna miss that boy.
But not too much, as Brian pretty much removes Dylan from his life after this episode, only attempting to step back into it when he realizes he has something to gain and Brian's a bad father.
The last thing he needs is a father who's, sometimes there, sometimes not.
I mean, that sounds like an improvement to their current relationship, as he is firmly in the sometimes not camp at this moment. But when Brian learns that Dylan is an actor on a new television show, he suddenly sees something in reigniting their relationship.
Your son's gonna be a TV star. Brian?
The best bit of parenting Brian could have done for Dylan is T-boning his car into a tree before he got to meet up with him. Unfortunately, the universe is not so giving, and Brian starts to use Dylan's new job as a way to weasel his way into work for himself.
I don't know, Dad. I've barely seen you in the past few years.
So what better way to reconnect than by working together every day?
Yeah, there's probably a reason why a ton of companies have rules in place that prevent you from working with your family members. And working with dogs. That's probably the bigger issue here. So Dylan manages to get him a job, but Brian craps the bed, as to be expected, and he quickly gets dumped from the show.
Dad, believe me, I want you to work here with me, but you can't keep doing things like that.
Dylan should have realized that the only time he thought his dad's writing was good was when he got zooted with him in the last episode. It's probably the only way he can hear about Brian's book and not be the one leaving his dad. Luckily, Dylan clocks exactly what Brian's trying to do here.
You've just been using me to advance your career. God, you're a terrible father.
Well, yeah, didn't you read the title of the episode? That should have been your first clue. And that's pretty much the last time we see Brian have any kind of relationship with Dylan, which, is probably for the best. Even still, this moment will haunt Brian for years as he tries to make up for it by parenting others instead of making things right with his own son. And perhaps the weirdest way Brian has ever tried to redeem himself as a dad involved him trying to act as a father figure to Quagmire when he starts to date Ida again and Bryda.
How's your son, Brian? We don't talk, but Ida, you can't blame yourself.
I mean, Brian could benefit from blaming himself a lot more if we're being honest. So when Brian and Ida rekindle their romance, Brian decides he won't be ashamed of their pairing and wants to be fully involved in Ida's life, including her son's.
Get ready for eggs a la Brian. Scrambled eggs with a side of toast.
A true culinary innovator. Why Brian would try to fill the role of a fatherly figure to a 60-something-year-old man who hates him is anybody's guess, but if it makes Ida happy, Quagmire's willing to go along with this BS for the time being.
Alright, I guess I can do that.
He'll just have to get used to feeling like someone's dragging an ice pick down his back. I'm sure that's a pretty manageable expectation. So the weirdo father-son duo first tries their hand at bonding at the Science Museum.
It's like night at the museum in here.
How?
Well, you know, like the guys are gonna come to life.
You can't just nonchalantly talk about that movie to a Night at the Museum head like Quagmire. He can look past you dating his mom, but to so flippantly speak on Night at the Museum? That's a very dangerous game to play, my friend.
Be very, very careful treading around night at the museum.
Okay, so the museum didn't work out, so how about some good old-fashioned touch football in the backyard? It's the game where parental bonds are strengthened and someone eventually gets shoved too hard and starts crying, and now everybody has to go home.
Alright, we're gonna destroy those kids.
Well, someone's on the wrong team. Boy, they're in such a hurry not to be kids anymore.
Serves Quagmire right for getting so excited about beating children. Really not representing the childless adult community well. And when Brian undermines Quagmire's stellar football skills by insisting that he let the latter get a touchdown, Quagmire's ready to commit some patricide.
I already have a dad and it's my mom. Alright, Brian? Stop trying to be my dad, you fraud.
This is usually how all barbecues end, although we're pretty sure the family dog isn't usually this heavily involved. But when the decision comes down to either Quagmire or Brian, Ida chooses her son, leaving Brian once again sonless. He really could pick the phone up at any time, but I guess it's hard to have a relationship with your real son when you have nothing to gain. So Brian is definitely a deadbeat, but in a way, it's actually probably beneficial for Dylan. Dylan is arguably having a much better life without him, and since Brian isn't a constant, active source of ruin in Dylan's life, we're not so sure he can be considered the worst dad. And the same could probably be said about Ernie the Giant Chicken, who has 2 kids of his own and maintains a healthy family life, though it doesn't exactly look like he's teaching them the right things as seen in The Chicken or the Meg.
If you don't accept Nugget, you don't accept me. I'm moving in with him.
So after Meg starts dating Ernie's son and Peter rejects their pairing, Meg decides to move in with the Giant Chicken. It's about time Meg got on a healthy chicken feed only diet, but what's not healthy is how Ernie encourages his family to laugh at the misery of Peter.
Guess you'll just have to make do with your crinkled ones.
I guess it's not the craziest thing in the world to hate the guy who nearly killed your dad a bunch of times, but still, teaching your family to hate anybody seems like a pretty questionable practice. It even becomes a requirement for Meg if she wants to continue living under the chicken's roof.
Meg, either you hate your dad or you leave this house.
Simple enough, though he didn't clarify whether or not Meg could leave with Ernie's head, so she ends up calling an audible. His methods are certainly questionable, but while he wasn't the worst dad to his kids, his tainted worldview ended up costing them their dad altogether. Remove the hate in your heart or get decapitated. Lessons to live by. But that title could have easily gone to Joe at one point, as he's been shown to go the extra mile for his kids. Well, Susie anyway. When he's reunited with his son Kevin in Thanksgiving, things get off on the wrong foot when Joe tries to have him arrested rather than celebrating his return.
Kevin, you're alive! I don't believe it!
Oh my god, it's a miracle!
So Kevin returns home after being presumed dead in Iraq, and everyone's ecstatic. That is, until Joe starts noticing that his timeline of events doesn't match up. It's cool that he's alive and everything, but I think Joe would rather have a dead soldier than an alive deserter.
I bailed! I faked my death and went AWOL!
Thank you for your service? I'm never quite sure what to say to soldiers, especially ones disenfranchised by the horrors of war. But Joe has a very particular brand of welcoming his son home.
Kevin, you're under arrest for the crime of desertion.
What are you, some kind of narc, Joe? If you're a cop, you legally have to tell us. So Joe's willing to ruin his relationship with his son, and more importantly, this Thanksgiving dinner, all in one fell swoop. At least let the kid get some pumpkin pie in his system before being sent to rot in a cell.
Come on, Kevin, I'm taking you to jail.
Joe, wait!
Not now, Bonnie.
Joe, you can't!
It actually ends up being Bonnie who stands up for Kevin more than Joe. I knew her soul wasn't completely barren. You know, just mostly. But Joe's eventually talked down after he's reminded that he's also broken the law before to stand up for what he believes in. So you could say Kevin learned it from watching him. For once, that means something good and not just learning how to roll a doobie.
But I suppose sometimes a man has to do what he thinks is right.
So Joe figured out how to forgive his son, which is admirable, but that was also the easy part. Now he's got a PTSD-stricken vet living under his roof, and I don't think Joe's got the parenting skills to handle that. For instance, Joe attempts to bond with his son by setting up a call for the two of them on an adult hotline and call girl.
Hello?
Hi there. Sexy.
Oh yeah, and Lois is the woman on the other line. Don't worry about that too much. Worry about the fact that Joe thinks this is a good thing to do with his son.
Listen, I want to double team you on the phone with my son.
Ow.
Yeah, the family's kind of falling apart.
And nothing works like glue better than having an awkward romantic encounter over the phone with your son. God should have honestly smited Joe the second the phrase double team escaped his lips.
Are you into guys in wheelchairs?
Not really.
And it kinda seems like this is the only approach to getting closer with his son he wants to try, because in Fresh Air, he even makes a move on Kevin after seeing that Peter's gonna marry Chris.
No, Dad.
I don't know what normal is anymore.
Me either, man, but I still would probably think that's not the direction you gotta be going with your son. So Joe at least is shown to be caring for his kids, he just has no clue how to actually be there for them. Well, it's the thought that counts. He should be sure to tell CPS that when they come to take Susie away from him eventually. And if there's one person who probably shouldn't be a father, it's Quagmire. He'd probably even say that himself. But he's managed to pop a few of them out in his lifetime, and he hasn't exactly handled them very well, like with his daughter Anna Lee from the episode Quagmire's Baby.
Glenn, this is your child. Next time wear a condom, jerk. Oh my God!
So a baby girl gets left on Quagmire's doorstep, which means whether he wants to or not, he's gonna have to act like a father. Which means no more late nights, no more wild parties, and he's gonna need to childproof everything. It's funny because if he had just childproofed one thing about him, he probably wouldn't be in this mess.
You smoke?
But Quagmire doesn't want to completely give up on his bachelor ways, though nothing kills the mood more than having a baby crying in the other room. I would hope. If the opposite applies to you, please check yourself into the nearest institution.
Damn kids kept me up every night for 2 weeks. Now where were we? Giggity giggity.
Quagmire without getting tail is like a fish without water. In order for him to survive, he's gonna have to get rid of this kid. Well, all you can do is try your best, and Quagmire, well, he didn't do that. But I don't think anyone's really lining up to be the child of this guy.
Hello, sir. Do you wish to put this child up for adoption?
Yeah, it's not working out. I need to get her out of my hair.
I get Quagmire's doing the right thing that will ultimately be best for Anna Lee, but you could still probably talk about her like she's a human being and not an old couch you're trying to pawn off. But then Quagmire gets all wishy-washy about it later, for some reason, being reminded of his infant daughter while at a strip club. Alright, man. That kid should have been ripped away from you immediately.
I think I might have made a terrible mistake. I abandoned my daughter.
Well, you've probably got a handful of them running around out there somewhere. I'm sure there's enough for a second and third chance. But Quagmire decides to go and get Anna Lee back, though when he notices how happy she looks with her adopted parents, he decides that this is for the best.
They look like a real family. I can't take her away from this.
A pretty mature decision. Maybe Quagmire actually has what it takes to be a father after all, is what we would say if he didn't end the episode with that comment.
Hey, who knows? Maybe I'll bump into her in 18 years. What? Did you really think I was gonna change that much?
Yeah, joke's on us for thinking Quagmire had a conscience. He definitely made the right decision as a father by giving up the kid, but you can't ignore that he made the terrible decision of becoming a father to begin with. And this isn't the only daughter Quagmire would sire, though in No Giggity No Doubt, he does make more of an effort with Courtney, even if it makes him way more annoying.
How old are you?
18.
All right, and I just recorded you saying that, and hi, I am Glenn Quagmire.
So while Quagmire is helping chaperone a school dance, which kinda sounds like letting the wolf herd the sheep, he meets Courtney, a teenager who he really wants to chaperone from the comfort of his bed.
Oh, Courtney.
Oh, Glenn. Oh, giggity.
Looks like she's got whatever disease Quagmire has that makes him talk in gibberish whenever he's excited. But actually, she is a Quagmire, his daughter in fact. And do you believe us when we say that after the last episode, we're actually shocked to see that be a deal breaker for him?
I never knew my mom. I was hoping that you could tell me about her.
Of course I can.
Well, you know, she had those eyes and the hair, all 4 limbs probably. Then again, this is Quagmire. I think his requirements are a lot more loose than the average person. I guess the fact that he has no clue who the mom could be does make him a pretty crappy dad, but Quagmire's willing to try and make up for it this time.
I don't want to be a burden.
No, it's no problem. Hey, you're my daughter. I want to make sure you have everything you need.
Unless you're a baby, which is just too hard and she'll have to figure out life without him. Anna Lee's somewhere punching air right now. So Quagmire lets Courtney stay with him, which puts him into full-on dad mode. And yes, it's just as awful as it sounds.
Hello, fellow daddy-os.
Did you bang your kid yet?
Okay, Peter, can I talk to you for a second?
Oh, come on, you know everybody was thinking it. Quagmire was probably even thinking it deep down. But while he's good at being present for Courtney, he's presently one of those dads you want to jump in the parking lot after an athletic meet.
9.2? I'll give you a 9.2 on the Richter scale.
And things only get more annoying when he drags Peter and Meg out into the woods for a dad and daughter camping trip. That wild mountain lion attack can't come soon enough.
Hooah! Gosh, being in nature gives me such great energy. Hey, Courtney, you ever see a yellow-headed warbler?
I don't trust that that's not some weird double entendre. Maybe let's keep the things Quagmire wants everyone to look at through binoculars to a minimum, shall we? But even the stress of the outdoors manages to break Quagmire, who realizes he's changed his entire personality just for his daughter. And we can't believe we're agreeing with him on this, but that's a bad thing.
Dad, I'm sorry.
I'm not Dad! I'm Quagmire! Glenn Quagmire!
Which means the only daughters he wants to associate with are someone else's. Yeah, this is the last time we end up seeing Courtney, which pretty much makes Quagmire as much of a deadbeat as he accuses Brian of being. I think the thing that sucks about him the most is that he's shown he has the propensity to change, but can just never stick to it. It's probably good that he's not a dad, but it stinks that he probably has the potential to be the best one if he puts his mind to it. And you may have forgotten that news reporter Tom Tucker has a son, which would probably be for the best considering he's not the best at disciplining him, as seen in North by North Quahog.
Come on, Chris, it's just vodka. Jake swiped it from his dad's liquor cabinet.
Yeah, that upside-down faced mismatch of a character is Tom's kid, Jake Tucker. So after he brings alcohol to the school dance, Chris ends up getting in trouble for it, leading Brian and Stewie to step in as de facto parents to confront Tom about this.
It's no concern of mine if it's turned his life upside down, Face. Jake's a good boy. Aren't you, Jake?
Yeah!
Yet another celebrity turning a blind eye to their children's debauchery. Overconsumption of alcohol is probably what got Jake's face looking like that in the first place. Luckily, Brian and Stewie get back at him by planting illicit substances in Jake's locker, which leads to Tom parenting his son in quite the public fashion.
The student has been sentenced to 200 hours of community service and is a very bad boy.
Narcotics for me, but not for thee seems to be the parenting motto Tom lives by. I guess Tom must have stopped caring about Jake after some time because we hardly ever see him anymore. Probably a good thing for the general public, but you still can't help but feel bad for the kid to a degree.
Dad, there's an evil monkey in my closet!
I don't care, son. I just do not care.
And another dad who didn't really care all that much is Carter Pewterschmidt, a man who has all the money in the world and yet didn't seem to give his kids the time of day. That's pretty apparent in the episode Adaptation, where Carter adopts a young girl who he ends up treating way better than he treated Lois.
Mr. Pewterschmidt, it's imperative we do immediate damage control or your stock will plummet.
So after Pewterschmidt Industries gets embroiled in a scandal, Carter needs to find something to do to cast a positive light on himself, so he settles on taking pictures with kids at an orphanage. Because if there's one thing people think is just great right now, it's a rich guy in photos with a bunch of children. Read The Room 3 years in the future, buddy.
That one looks the least filthy. Okay, let's get a picture so I can get out of here.
But Carter actually bonds quite well with Tatum, as Carter sees much of himself in her. It turns out all he ever wanted in a child was someone with a similar business-minded outlook on life. It's too bad Lois hates big business, Carol is perpetually divorced, and Patrick's out there somewhere strangling fat people.
Then if you want a photo, you have to buy me candy.
I'm not buying you candy. Go to hell.
But Carter comes to respect her moxie and ends up liking her so much that he upgrades her from photo op to newest member of the family. Third time's the charm on daughters, I guess.
I just don't get it. I was raised by a nanny. Daddy didn't even learn my name until I was 8.
He probably was just thinking about his company's lowest quarterly earnings when he named her too. She just always reminded him of the bad times, so no wonder he didn't hang around with her. Lois thinks Carter will mistreat Tatum as he did to her, but the situation is even worse. Carter's treating her better than he ever treated Lois.
There's a Mr. Important on the line.
Tell him he'll have to wait.
What?
I get he's trying to make up for all his failures as a father, but does he have to do it right in front of the people he failed at the same time? Kinda feels like beating a dead horse. And to make matters worse, Carter decides to take Tatum to the zoo, something Lois always wanted to do but never got to.
Listen up, everyone in the van. We're taking Tatum to the zoo.
The zoo?
Don't get me wrong, it's great that he's not ruining a third child, but how does he not see how it affects his actual daughter? You could spit in Lois's face and it'd probably be more respectful than blindly giving Tatum everything he should have given Lois.
What else do you want, honey? Huh? My clothes? My car? You want to screw my husband?
Why would she want an infinitely worse experience than the one she has now? You're not very good at the intimidation game, Lois. At least Carter finally comes to terms with all the hurt he caused Lois back in the day.
I was never there, and it's the biggest regret of my life.
I guess he could have made it up to her by being present for her now rather than starting from square one again, but I see where his head's at. Up his own butt, mostly. And it seemed like Lois had a much closer relationship with her nanny, but it's revealed in Pewterschmidt Manor that Carter had her fired after having an affair with her, and wasn't even going to tell Lois about her funeral.
It was Meredith, your old nanny.
Meredith? Oh, I loved that woman.
So after Lois has to press the identity of the person whose funeral Carter's going to, she decides to tag along to say goodbye to her favorite nanny. Man, some kids were just so privileged. I want a nanny funeral.
Yeah, we never had a lot of daddy-daughter time when I was young. You were always so busy.
Not now, kitten.
Now that's a businessman. Too busy to hang out with his daughter and too busy to drive his car. Someone should probably put their hands on the wheel just to be safe. But while this might seem like the perfect road trip for the dad and daughter to connect over, Lois learns at the funeral that Meredith didn't quit being a nanny like she originally thought.
It's a shame she had to give it up after the affair.
Affair?
What is it with rich guys and sleeping with the nanny? It's so cliche at this point. When are rich guys gonna give their gardener some love, or the lawyer they eventually have to hire to force the gardener to stay quiet?
Daddy and Meredith had an affair. That's why she left me.
There's certainly never a shortage of reasons to hate Carter. It's kind of like he has a quota to reach or something.
While you were off working or golfing or God knows what, she was at my piano recitals or teaching me how to tie my shoes.
Not to cut Carter any slack or anything, but where was Babs during all of this? I'm pretty sure she wasn't working or anything, so Meredith was being both her father and her mother? Just one more reason why rich people need to be slowly dipped into a vat. At least Lois can say her goodbyes and remember all the good things that Meredith taught her.
Even today, you're teaching me that the people you love most of all can still betray you.
Gotta hate someone who makes a funeral all about them. How about you die first, and then all the attention can be on you? But Lois is rightfully fed up with her dad, so Carter tries to do something nice for both her and Meredith.
Figured you can come here to sit whenever you miss Meredith.
Daddy, this is beautiful.
I guess all Carter can ever do is try to make it up to Lois. Kinda seems like it would have been a whole lot easier to just not slight her to begin with, but what do I know? I am neither a father nor rich. YouTube has not found a way to give me either of those two things yet. And if getting rid of the woman who practically raised her wasn't enough, Carter would also try to do away with Lois's husband on multiple occasions, coming very close to having Peter executed and scammed Yankees.
Nobody steals from Carter Pewterschmidt. I am going to Africa and get my money back, and you're coming with me.
So after Carter loses a bunch of money through a Nigerian email scam at the behest of Peter, the two travel to Africa to get his money back. Couldn't be me, I hate confrontation. If I go into surgery and come out missing a body part, I'm just gonna learn to live with no right hand.
This is unacceptable. I demand to speak to Anthony Anderson.
Well, despite that warm gun butt welcome, the villagers end up acting a lot nicer once they realize who Carter is. If only they knew a little bit more about him, they'd have probably already shot him. But right now, he's practically a god.
It is with the money that you sent that we have been able to make many wonderful improvements to our village.
For once, Carter's money actually went towards something that actually benefited the lives of the unfortunate. Can't be having that, now can we?
Well, I hope you enjoyed it, because I'm taking it all back.
What?
You heard me.
Kinda hard to take back money that was already spent. I guess they can just settle for tearing apart their village. Seeing lives ruined is worth just about the same as money to Carter. Peter tries to stop him, but Carter realizes just how far he can get here by throwing his money around.
Here's $5,000. Lock up that fat ass.
It's the moment every father-in-law dreams of. A chance to be away from the American judicial system so you can lock away your idiot son-in-law. Yes, every father-in-law dreams of this. Sorry if you're learning this for the first time from a talking clam. But Peter just has to hope that Carter likes Lois more than he hates him.
Bye, Lois.
Oh my God!
Luckily for Peter, this is the case, so he survives this trip to Africa. I always thought lions or hyenas would be the most dangerous creature on the continent, but it turns out it's actually an old rich guy in a polo shirt. And maybe if Carter had known more about Lois, he would have known not to execute Peter, and maybe he wouldn't have gotten shot himself when he buys Lois a gun for her birthday and regarding Carter.
So, Lois, where are your parents? Didn't they say they were coming?
Yeah, but I'm sure Daddy had a last-minute work thing.
So after no-showing Lois's birthday party, Carter rolls up later in the night with a gift he just knows she's gonna like.
A gun?
Yeah, you love guns.
No, I don't. You don't know me at all.
I bet he totally regifted that gun too. Rich people are always getting gifted guns, so he probably had to clear out some room in his gun cabinet. And after Peter gets his hands on the gun, Lois has to give it back to her dad before Peter accidentally shoots himself, or someone who actually matters.
Daddy, you need to take this gun back. I never should have accepted it in the first place, and you never should have given it to me.
God forbid a father tries to do something nice and thoughtful for his daughter. Maybe if she could just see how cleanly you could blow someone's skull out with it, then she would understand how great a gift this is.
Damn it, Daddy, why won't you just take the gun?
I'd say this is just karma finally catching up to Carter. Sometimes what you're owed comes at you fast, like a bullet to the cranium. He eventually recovers and actually takes this as a sign that it's time to change his ways and make up for all his past mistakes.
We didn't do much. Your work always came first.
Really? And you still took care of me when I was hurt?
Well, you probably got a few slaps across the face while you were comatose, but yeah, that's what doing something for someone you love looks like. So in order to make up for lost time, Carter decides to retire so he can finally give his family the quality time they always wanted.
That's why I've decided to retire from Pewterschmidt Industries and give all my money to charity.
Charity must be the name of a woman he met out on the street at night, but still, at least it's good that the money's going towards someone who needs it. So while losing out on millions of dollars of inheritance sounds like something that might not be great, you can't put value on having your loved one finally around to spend time with. Well, Babs probably can.
Oh my God, Daddy!
Who told Carter he could give away our money?
Well, it was nice while it lasted. Carter has probably done some of the worst things out of any other father in the series, but he can at least be somewhat reasoned with as long as your name's Lois. He'll usually try to do what he can for his daughter, but it's hard to say if that will ever really erase the years of neglect, among other things. Seriously, what was this about?
It's okay, Lois. Daddy's just taking your temperature.
But let's look at someone with a more frequent presence in their children's lives. Peter. Surely a guy who's a terrible husband, friend, and citizen could be a better father, right? Well, he makes it very clear he should not be left alone with a baby or else he might return home with the wrong one, like in The Most Interesting Man in the World.
As long as I can still see him. Okay, Stewie, there you are, safe and sound. Daddy can still see you.
So while Peter is supposed to be watching Stewie at the park, he decides to drop into the Clam for a drink. Hey, I think a guy who managed to spend 5 minutes with his kid deserves a treat. And Stewie's a big boy. If he can kill a man in cold blood, surely he'll be okay at the park by himself.
Oh, hey, Lois. Hey, it's hard to hear you over the sound of joyful children in the park.
But when he needs to head home, Peter rushes back to the park and grabs the nearest bald baby in yellow and red he can find. Didn't know this was the fit kids are rocking these days. Stewie really is a trendsetter.
You're not Stewie. I gotta get you back to the park and find...
I mean, what are the odds that Lois is gonna realize this is a different baby? It's not like she spends most of her days looking at him anyway. And don't all babies kinda look the same at the end of the day?
See, there's a human baby in there, asleep in Stewie's overalls.
Peter, please get out of my way!
But never bet against a mother's intuition, or a person with functioning eyes. She quickly realizes that it's not her son, but luckily the whole mix-up gets sorted out.
I left my husband in charge, which was obviously a terrible mistake.
I don't know what the big deal is. Neither of the kids died, which is usually the bare minimum you would expect from anything involving Peter and children. But now would probably be a good time to make sure Peter understands the gravity of the situation.
You left a helpless baby in a public park, and that's something only an idiot would do.
Phew, well at least he's not a bad dad. But it turns out those two descriptors aren't mutually exclusive. We can't say we're shocked, honestly. How often does Peter even hang out with Stewie? He should be applauded for even knowing his name. And it's clear Peter doesn't like to spend any time with his kids, as even after he gets lap band surgery and gets Stewie to spend more time with Chris, he still ends up blowing off his son.
I'd love to, Chris.
So when even just walking a few dozen feet becomes the equivalent of running a marathon for Peter, Lois thinks it's about time he finally does something about his health.
It's affecting your relationship with Chris. Boys need a father who can spend time with them.
Well, Chris just needs more hobbies that Peter can do. Why doesn't he give sweating on the floor and fighting for breath a try? But Peter instead decides to go to the doctor to find ways to help him lose weight.
You can increase your exercise. Pass. Switch to a vegan diet. I'd rather die. Or quit drinking.
Sure, all those things could be leading him to an early grave, but it's better to have lived a painfully short life filled with a few vices than a long and fruitful one without. That's just my medical opinion as someone legally not allowed to give out medical advice. But there is a pretty drastic measure they could take, and that involves giving Peter lap band surgery.
Oh my God, this is worse.
I feel amazing, like a bride on his wedding day.
Well, other than having to live in a puddle of his own excess skin and being one of those people whose heads stay huge after weight loss, I'd say this might be a win. But now that he has a lot more mobility, he and Chris can finally have the father-son bonding time they were meant to have.
I would love to, Chris, but like all people who undergo drastic weight loss, I have time to make up for.
All those years wasted by not being a human version of muck, but Peter's finally gonna make things right. Of course, there's little room for spending time with your kids when you're living life as human diarrhea. Normally, a child would actually be thankful for that, but Chris wants to spend time with his dad no matter his viscosity.
You were supposed to be helping Chris with his science fair project. Peter, get out of that cocoon!
Peter eventually does get out, emerging as a dad who learned the error of his ways, but it still goes to show that Peter is more often than not focused on only his interests and happiness. Somehow, he was much more likable when he was dying on the floor. But Peter is often too stupid to realize the harm in things, especially when he decides to fight with his son over the attention of a literal predator rather than protect him and con Eris.
Great Caesar's ghost! Chris and a chubby little friend? It's like in my dream!
Is there a way we can start policing dreams? I'm all for Big Brother if it stops this guy. So when Herbert mistakes Peter for a young boy, he does everything he can to keep him and Chris around in the tiniest shorts known to man.
And I can pay you under the table. I like to make a little fort under there. I call it Fort Dix.
The wrong kind of tents are being pitched in that fort, and as a father, Peter really should be smart enough to see what's going on. Of course, he doesn't. All he sees is a nice old man who's willing to give him treats in exchange for some yard work.
Ain't no shame in being chubby. You're a growing boy.
He does continue to grow, doesn't he? It's too bad the body parts that matter don't follow suit, like his brain. But how could this be a bad gig? He gets to have all the NyQuil Kool-Aid and cookies with pills in them he wants, which means that there's none left for Chris.
Sorry, Chris. He just got to him first.
I thought I was your favorite.
Is this actually a roundabout good act of parenting from Peter? I mean, if he's subjecting himself to all the gazing and poisoning Herbert does, then that protects Chris from having to experience it. An unorthodox method for sure, but I can't actually believe Peter is doing this out of the goodness of his heart.
Petey, let's play horsey.
Of course, this episode ends without Peter realizing what's really going on. In his defense, neither does Chris. But at least you could read Chris's desire for the attention of an older man as filling the void left by Peter, who continues to ignore him. Brushing him off is one thing, but stealing his own mental coping mechanism? That is some rough parenting on Peter's part.
Why are you being such a jerk, Dad?
And you probably already know this, but Meg definitely suffers from the most physical abuse from Peter out of any of the children, like in Dial Meg for Murder when she gets hog-tied and dragged through the house. It's a terrible thing to do to your daughter, but I gotta say, his lasso form is impeccable. The branding does take things a little too far, but it looks like someone beat Peter to the punch.
All right, Meg, this is only gonna hurt for about 3 weeks. What the hell?
Gotta keep an eye on your cattle. Also, you probably shouldn't be treating your daughter like cattle. Just my 2 cents. Peter has shown himself to be neglectful, dismissive, and straight up abusive to his children, so it probably isn't too far outside of reality to crown him as one of, if not the worst fathers in Family Guy. But Peter would have had to learn these parenting habits from somewhere, and it probably isn't too hard to imagine that the poor parenting from his dad Francis played a role in his life. Despite his staunch religious beliefs, Francis was no saint, as seen in episodes like The Father, the Son, and the Holy Fawns.
Francis, it's so good to see you.
Louis, I haven't changed a bit, you lying b****.
Off to a good start, as we can see. So when Francis comes over to the Griffin's house for a stay, he wastes no time in disrespecting his son's home by insulting Lois and questioning why they haven't had Stewie baptized.
I love this family, and I don't want my grandson to burn in hell.
I know the whole idea of a baptism is to absolve you of your sins, but they might need something a little stronger to scrub away Stewie's. Maybe some acid or a nuclear reactor meltdown. And Francis continues to use his stay to push his religion down everyone's throats.
You're a lapsed Catholic, Peter. Your wife's a Protestant and your baby isn't even baptized.
At this point, it might be easier on everyone's sanity if they just let Francis splash Stewie a bit. And then they can take a turn dunking Francis's head in water until the bubbles stop coming up. But when Francis learns that the holy water at church is tainted, he still goes through with the baptism anyway, leading to Stewie getting sick.
I've examined your son, and he is suffering from a temporary toxic anemia, which has substantially weakened his immune system.
Kids these days and their toxic anemia. Just rub some dirt in it and get him back out on the playground. But this causes Peter to have a crisis of faith, as he now associates Christianity with the rudeness and aggression of his father. At least Francis has some decent fatherly advice to give Peter for a change.
Who's always been there for you, offering wisdom and truth? You've known him all along, son. Now worship him!
Well, Peter's results may vary, because as a man-child raised by TV, Peter's savior is swathed in leather and his hair is caked in grease. Praise be to the mighty Fawns.
The Fawns be with you.
And also with you.
Let us
So this leads to Peter creating his own religion and church centered around the beloved Happy Days character, something that does not sit well with Francis. Well, if you've read the Bible and watched Happy Days, you'll notice a lot of similarities. Who's to say who really inspired who, honestly?
What I saw today wasn't religion. It was just a bunch of sheep singing songs and listening to ridiculous tall tales.
I think he's just mad that the Happy Days theme song is way more of a bop than the average church hymn. And just like Josiah before him, Francis takes it upon himself to erase the false idols from the land, even teaming up with the godless heathen Brian to make it happen. Typical Brian, just being against the newest, coolest thing.
Hi, I'm Sherman Hemsley, and I've just established the Church of George Jefferson. Who wants to move on up?
And their plan is to get other sitcom actors to create churches revolving around their own characters. So now not only are people farther removed from Christianity, but they're also wrapped in a bunch of imitator religions based on nostalgia. Something tells me that threatening people with the prospect of going to hell wasn't going to win people back over to Francis's side. I don't think Peter even learns a lesson here, certainly not one from Francis. But at least it ends with them bonding over their mutual dislike for Madonna, so I guess that's a win?
She's awful.
Awful, awful woman.
I agree, yeah.
And she's a
Oh yeah, big time.
But this doesn't exactly lead to a healthy change in their relationship, as even when he's on death's door, Francis still can't help but tell Peter how much he dislikes him and Peter's two dads.
Well, I'm sure she'll love this.
I want to see her eat it.
So it's Meg's birthday, and Peter has decided to play the role of clown for the festivities, something Francis berates him for. For once, Francis is on the same page as us. Clowns are only good for horror movie villains or taking a heavy ball to the face in a carnival game.
Dad, you won't say that when you see my grand unicycle finale.
It must have sounded really appealing to Francis because he ends up getting a front row seat at the bottom of the stairs. Peter really should have established a splash zone like at SeaWorld, only this time the whale is landing right on top of you.
Grandpa! Oh my god! Is he breathing?
Somebody call an ambulance!
But only if you have the cellular minutes to spare. It's no rush, really. Check your data plan first. Francis can probably wait.
His internal injuries were much too severe. I'd estimate he'll be dead within the hour.
It's more like within the minute. But before he passes into the great beyond, Francis leaves his son with some parting words. Words no doubt meant to encapsulate the love and pride Francis has had for Peter all these years.
You're a fat, stinking drunk.
Well, you can't say that Francis didn't see Peter for who he really is. Deep down, he was fully aware of the person Peter was. It's just too bad he hated what he saw. So yeah, Francis was pretty terrible to Peter to the point where we don't even know if it can be considered tough love. But he was there. Sure, Peter probably wished he wasn't half the time, but at least he had some kind of presence in Peter's life. Can't say the same for that deadbeat Mickey McFinnigan.
You knocked up my mom and never called her again. Yeah, so what?
But who do you think is the worst father in Family Guy? Let us know down in the comments, and if you have any suggestions for videos you'd like to see, let us know down there as well. And if you liked what you saw here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to catch more great Family Guy videos.